Hey everybody, this is Objectively Dan. I just wanted to give a quick note at the beginning of this video or podcast if you're listening to this in podcast form. One of my co-hosts today was Kelly Laughlin, and he used a word to describe Black people that is a bit antiquated today. Specifically, he used the word blacks instead of describing them as Black people. We like to focus on person first language because it always humanizes a subject. For example, instead of describing people as we prefer to use the words enslaved people. So it was said on the show, and we did address it, although my regret, we didn't address it until a few minutes later. So Kelly did apologize for that, and he feels very bad for it. But we wanted to give him the space to do that on the show while we were still alive. So there is a little bit of an awkward moment in the show where we do discuss it, but it was addressed. We felt that we wanted to keep the show in its entirety, which is why that we are putting this message at the beginning of today's show. So thanks for your attention on this, and I hope you enjoy listening to the rest of the episode. Hey folks, lots of people believe in different things, and that's why we're here every single Friday. So if you believe in alternative facts or a conspiracy or what other people would call pseudoscience or even religion, we want to talk to you about why you believe it and examine the evidence you present. So give us a call because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can do that and should do that. The number is 512-991-9242, or call through your computer at tiny.cc/call TW. And as always, Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always try to have a special guest. This week is no different. It is Fe joining me today from TikTok. Fe, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
Fee, I'm so glad you are joining with me today. Fee, you are part of a discussion, a panel, if you will, of folks with Thinker on Thinker, who was on just a few weeks ago on TikTok, where you also talk to people about what they believe and why, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. Thinker and Christina and the Bash and the whole crew, the nerds and the Fishtin, and it's just a great group of people. We have we're on pretty much every day and various topics. Like we'll come up with various prompts and start the conversations, and they're always interesting. Needless to say, that the people that are willing to talk to us, variety of backgrounds, variety of beliefs, some of them coherent, some of them not so much. But
Yep.
it's a wonderful opportunity, and just a great group of people.
Been there, done that with the whole coherent versus non-coherent beliefs. If you have incoherent beliefs, I still want to hear them, to be clear. You know, lines are open. But it's funny how when people say some of their stuff out loud, they don't even realize sometimes how nonsense it can be, right?
Yeah, we had somebody today tell us that Adam and Eve were spiritual humans. We still don't know what that means, but
okay, spiritual humans.
Yeah,
That it's so funny. Like, you know, and I get it because I was a Christian and I understand why. But like everything we understand about history, archaeology, anthropology, you know, we all have to retrofit that into the Bible, right? So it's like, well, we can't say Adam and Eve are a real person because that doesn't make sense based on what we know about human history, but maybe we can say they're spiritual people.
We know that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but it's just like, you know, like I used to do this myself because I was never a young earth creationist guy, but I was like, oh well, I believe in evolution. I just think like the Genesis account's like a metaphor, right? But if you ask me like the details of that metaphor, I couldn't really tell you, right? Because like, what does that mean? It's a metaphor at the end of the day. How does that describe anything?
What is it a metaphor for, right?
Yeah.
Like like we know from a scientific perspective the things that we do know at this particular point, but like that story just doesn't fit. I
Yeah.
don't know why people fight so hard to try to make it true. I mean, I do know, but
Yeah.
it makes for interesting conversations.
Yeah, and it gets worse because I've said this before, but I'll agree with the young creationists on this. As the only thing I agree with Earth creationists on is that you really can't interpret the rest of the Bible without kind of believing in a young Earth creationist narrative, because
Hmm.
Jesus and Paul also talk about events that happen in the Old Testament, particularly with Adam and Eve, but also other stories as they literally happen. They didn't seem to interpret these just as stories. So it's like in the
Right.
early, like if Jesus is saying all this happened, then are we calling Jesus a liar, or is he also just making metaphors? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense.
It falls apart, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why most people don't ask the questions. Like with these conversations we see, like I think the devil is in the details. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
did that happen? What
Yeah.
would that look like if this were actually the case? But it's those questions that folks just kind of skirt over, I think, because if you look at it too hard, it completely starts to fizzle.
Right, absolutely. But Fee, I want to get back to you because you got that shirt on right now and says hashtag Black Atheist. I love that.
Thank
But
you.
you weren't always an atheist, right?
No, no. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. My parents became witnesses when I was a year old. So it was literally all I knew.
Mm,
Lived, breathed it, like constantly studied, read, like attended meetings, knocked on doors, like all of the typical JW stuff.
mm,
It wasn't until I had questions though. Like my dad and I were always really studious. Like we would question things and study things. And then when I would ask him the questions that they couldn't answer, he would always say, well, we'll have to learn later because, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that paradise is coming to earth and
yeah.
all the J-dubs will be here, all the non-J-dubs will be gone. But I would just accept that because it was a testament of faith to just trust without knowing. But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until my son was, I think he was like 6 months old. My husband at the time asked me, "What would you do if he grew up and didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness?" And
Mm,
because Jehovah's Witnesses practice what they call disfellowshipping, I'm like, my knee-jerk reaction was, "Oh, well, he's going to have to find somewhere else to live." And in that moment, I'm like, you don't believe that, like you're not going to do that. Like that's what I
mm,
said to myself in my mind. So I had to decide at that point, did I want to be the type of mother that didn't model for a child authenticity, and I didn't want to do that. So that kind of was the first domino to start me into looking into what this belief system really was, where it came from, and that was 20 plus years ago. So
wow.
yeah.
Authenticity, not a traditional Christian trait, or certainly not a Jehovah's Witness
No.
trait either, is it?
Mm-mm. Not
Mm.
at all. Not at all. It's very performative. We talk about that
Mm.
in the conversations on TikTok as well, where Christianity, I think, is more about perception as opposed to behavior. As long as you are perceived as a good person, or you have the movements or the actions of someone that's proper or moral or whatever adjective you want to add to it, then you're fine. It doesn't matter who you are as a person. And I didn't like the way that felt. So, and I definitely didn't want to raise my son that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a minute since we've talked about Jehovah's Witnesses on this
Hmm.
show, and we have a lot of international audiences who may not be as familiar, because
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses is a very pretty American sort of religion, I would argue. Maybe you disagree
Mm-mm.
with that. You disagree with that?
No, they are global.
Well, they're
Yeah.
global, but they have a stronger presence in the U.S. more than any other country, right? Am
I
I wrong about that?
mean, I think they've got a pretty strong presence all over. Like annually, you would have to do this. We would get this book, and this book would tell us the numbers in each country, unless they were lying, which I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think they were. Because when I did my deep dive shortly after I decided that this wasn't for me, I found a lot of child abuse cases
Hmm.
and that were settled in other countries and things like that. So
Oh,
they're
hold on.
pretty
You're telling
international.
me there's child abuse cases with Jehovah's
What?
Witnesses? That
Who'da thunk
what?
it?
Oh, okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
same.
And yeah, you're right. It is a because it's an evangelical
Right.
religion, right? But I
Mhm.
mean, like obviously it's evangelical, but I mean, like they're really passionate about that, obviously, right? That's the stereotype
Yeah.
of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's people
Mhm.
going to door and doing the whole thing. When I think of Jehovah's Witnesses, one thing I think of is I got the opportunity to go to Hawaii a few years ago, and it was a great trip overall. And while I was there, I saw a Kingdom Hall in
Mhm.
Hawaii, and I was like, God, I'm in this beautiful island, this beautiful place. Why the hell would I want to go to church here? Why would anybody want to go to this? Because
Yeah.
every single story I hear, just like from you, Fee, it's never like there's positive short, but Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, very intensive religion,
Very,
right?
very, yeah, very.
Mm,
Now, I say this all the time, right? Like, I don't have traumas
mm,
related with my religious experience. Like, I have fond memories. I have friends that, childhood friends that I don't even remember ever not knowing. So, luckily, I'm not one of the people who have, hurt associated with that religious
mm,
experience. But it's very high control.
yeah.
Like, there's no holidays, there's no birthdays. The only thing that you can celebrate is like if you're married, your anniversary, but that's pretty much it.
Hmm.
You're in meetings 2, 3 times a week, you're knocking on doors, and the days that you're not in the meetings, you have to study for and prepare for those meetings. And not only are you studying the material, you've got to do extra research to like
Hmm.
add points that you didn't necessarily see printed in the material. So it's very high control. It's almost as though you don't even have the time to contemplate any thoughts outside of what they're telling you to think. So
Mm,
it's very it is definitely one
right.
of the more intense ones.
And of course, you mentioned the mechanism of disfellowship, right?
Hmm.
And of course, you're talking about it in the context of a fearful thing, which I think is what that's designed to do, right? You don't want to
Absolutely.
be disfellowed. You don't like that's the worst
Hmm.
thing because to be disfellowed, and again, for those who aren't aware, is it's much more intensive than just leaving a church community, right? Maybe you want to
Yeah.
talk about that a bit?
It is. It's excommunication basically, right?
Hmm.
At underneath it all, it's psychological manipulation because you
Hmm.
are encouraged not to form relationships outside of the organization, even with your own family members. So when you are disfellowship, your entire support system is gone. Like your parents aren't supposed to talk to you,
Hmm.
your siblings aren't supposed to talk to you. There's supposed to be no I guess camaraderie whatsoever, no communication at all.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty difficult. I had a childhood best friend who was disfellowshipped. My sister was disfellowshipped at once,
Hmm.
at one point. So it's really it's
Was it
difficult.
was that after you left the church?
No,
That was
I
before
was
you left. Okay.
yeah,
So
I was still.
you had a
Mhm.
model a little bit that
Mhm.
of what that looked like. Hmm.
Yeah, and I remember I was in living where I am now. I moved from Georgia, but I drove back home and I was visiting. I was talking to, just catching up with my sister like you would if, visiting for the weekend. And my dad called me in the room. He's like, you're not supposed to be talking to her. And I'm like, I'm not driving 8 hours to not talk to my sister. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So even within being part of the religion, still believing it, there were still certain things I'm like, I'm not going to not talk to my sister.
Hmm.
So there were things that just did not seem kind, that didn't seem loving. Like I knew
Wow.
people who were kicked out of their houses because they had
Hmm.
questions or because they no longer wanted to attend the Kingdom Hall anymore. So yeah, it was pretty rough for several people.
Wow. So you kept up that communication with your sister even though she was disfellowshipped from.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
And was she
And
an influence on you and on also leaving? Was she like, hey, you should get out of here too?
so it's funny because I'm the youngest of three girls. The oldest
Hmm.
one she's super quiet. Like she's the even more of a nerd than me. But the middle sister was the rebel. Like she was the one who was always like, this doesn't make any sense. Like she was the vocal one.
Hmm.
So it was interesting because I don't know that that was part of my deconstruction. And the reason I say that is because we were talking earlier before the show about the recording that you have with street epistemology
Yeah, with
and
Anthony
how,
Magnabosco. Hmm.
yeah, and I think I asked you, do you even recognize that person? Well, when my sister was disfellowship, I wrote her letters, trying to get her to come back, telling her, you've got to come back into the fold. So those letters are a reminder for me of who I was, my mindset at that time. So I guess it was more like this binary thing going on inside where
Hmm.
of course I'm going to talk to my family. My sisters and I are thick as thieves.
Hmm.
But then you've got this religious pressure to be this way or think this way, and it's hard to find any level of authenticity when you're wrestling with all of that at the same time.
Yeah. authenticity and autonomy from what it sounds like,
Yeah.
because that's an organization that's really telling you this is more important than your family.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing to hear as an outsider, I'd say.
It's it's really difficult. I mean,
Mm,
we talk about this almost daily on TikTok as well, how you're told what to think. Like I can remember in elementary school, I forget what class it was, but they were talking about dinosaurs or fossils or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, what am I supposed to think about dinosaurs? Like, am I supposed to think they're real? Not what does the research say? What does the
right,
data show? But like, what
right.
am I supposed to think? And I think
Mm,
that's one of the biggest markers of religion. You're told what to think and you're not taught how to think.
yeah.
And it just kind of reinforces that indoctrination.
That's so interesting that, and kudos to you. It sounds like, because your family really was a big breaking point for you in sort of leaving. Were there other things you were thinking about at this time as well? Because, for some people, it's after this one thing clicked, it was a waterfall. For some people, it's like multiple points. What was it for you that sort of broke the straw on the camel's back here for you
It was
leaving?
Yeah, it was primarily knowing that I needed to be able to model for my son
Mm,
an individual who lived authentically, who lived in
yeah,
truth. And
yeah,
I had seen growing up so many people who, who portrayed this godly, kind, loving persona, but at home they were assholes, right?
mm,
So I didn't want that. And
yeah,
I think that one idea kind of, like I said, was that first domino.
yeah,
And religious deconstruction leads to deconstruction of so many other systems that we are indoctrinated into, like patriarchy and
yes,
misogyny and
right.
all of these other ideologies. So it's been one of the most freeing experiences I could ever go through. I think I was telling Thinker and Christina one day, like it's kind of, I liken it to, how on the beach you see people maybe some footprints that have been
Right.
made before you come along. I think
That's Jesus
deconstruction,
carrying you
I
on the
guess that's
sand,
Jesus.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But then you have to stop walking. I think it takes effort to mimic someone else's gait, right? So when you stop trying to force yourself to walk someone else's path and you forge your own, there's a level of freedom that comes with that is hard to even describe,
Hmm.
because you stop living vicariously and you start living authentically. And I don't think you can put a price on that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You say it that way because speaking personally, like I remember in my own deconstruction, one of the things that drew me to like atheist content was, wow, these people are really saying stuff I literally never heard anyone say
Hmm.
or question, because it's not always the polite thing to question, but also like because it wasn't safe for me to
No.
question sometimes,
Mm-mm.
right?
No.
You talk about that authenticity. It's like, yeah, I am way more authentic now than I ever was when I was a Christian, because I had to, at my worst, put on a mask that didn't fit me,
Hmm.
and at my best, put the good parts about me and fit that into the religion. And when
Right.
it shouldn't have been that way. It should have been, I'm the person that I am, and how can I make myself better? Not how can I be better for Jesus or whatever. Like that's, yeah, it was all backwards.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
what does better look like for me, right? Like
Mm,
I think this concept of, of perfection, or this concept of the idealized version of yourself being dictated by someone else, like that's the problem. Like that religion teaches you that there's nothing about you that's inherently good, that
yeah.
you are nothing, but a big old bag of bad, right? And
Right.
it's hard to push that aside, because when that negativity gets into your mind, it's really difficult to root it out. So I think being able to recognize, like, no, like I do have good qualities. Like I'm not an asshole. Like I'm a decent human being. There
Yeah.
may be some things that I want to work on and I want to improve, but that's the duality of being a human. But I
Mm.
don't know that religion allows you to do that, because it forces you to continuously see yourself as something that's broken, and that they are the only thing that can offer you something to repair yourself, and that's just not true.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I want to ask you a question. I don't know, because I didn't ask you about this before, but how's your relationship with the rest of your family now? Can I ask you about that? Are
Yeah.
they cool with what you're doing now? Are they, or well, what do they feel about that?
They are probably watching as we speak. No, they are
Really?
cool.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
My dad really was the only one before he died. My dad died 10, I think 11 years ago now. He was the only one that was still kind of holding on, but I think he was kind of I think it was all just for I don't want to say he was faking it, but I think it was performative. I think it was just what he thought he needed to do and give to us to be a good dad.
Hmm.
My mother, she told me later, like recently, she never believed. She just went because it was something my dad wanted to do. My oldest sister, like I said, she was never really into it. Even when we have conversations now, she doesn't remember very much of it. And then my middle sister, like I said, she's always been the one like, this doesn't make any sense to me, but not necessarily the route of deconstruction in terms of having conversations with people about the Bible or about the falsifiability of the Bible and its claims. But luckily, I say all the time, I'm super lucky. I've not had any immediate family that had any issues with it. My childhood best friend did tell me that we can't be friends anymore,
Oh,
which
wow.
it hurt because we were absolutely inseparable. But
Hmm.
recently, there's been I think a change or an update in the Jehovah's Witness ideology around disfellowshipped or inactive people, so
Really? Oh,
that
that's news to
from
me. So I guess they have a prophet that says, "Oh, hey, God actually gave me a policy update." How does that work?
yeah, well, they call it the light getting brighter, which is weird.
Oh, all
But
right.
yeah, so the governing body, which is like the managing group of men in New York,
Hmm.
they come out with these new policies, and this
I
was
do like
one
that you
recently.
specify it is a group of men because it
Yeah,
is.
it's
It's
absolutely
yeah,
a group of
yeah,
men. Yeah, women. I mean, women can't do shit in this organization. I'm not gonna lie to you.
yeah.
It's
Mm.
I think, and a new change also is they just started letting women wear pants inside the Kingdom Hall before you can only wear skirts. Um,
Okay, okay. That
yeah.
wow. All right, catching up
hmm
to the times.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. So I guess Jehovah's trying to keep it more 20th century. I don't know what
Yeah,
he's doing,
I
but
know.
and the crazy part about it, I think about it now, I'm like, I really believe this shit. Like, I really thought that these random 8 white dudes in New York were literally talking to a god. Like, what was I thinking? But that's what indoctrination does.
Yeah, yeah. That yeah, you don't get those details day one.
Nope.
Yeah, that comes a bit
Mm-mm.
later.
The
Yeah.
fine print
Um,
information on like year 7, not immediately.
yeah.
Like, kick that
Same thing
can
with
down the
Mormons,
road.
same thing with Scientology. You don't
Yep.
get the deep cuts until
Yeah.
you're a little more into it, right? Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, so I guess they're updating the policy there. I would love to hear more about that, but I want to take a quick break from this conversation because I want to bring Kelly in, because Kelly is our backup host today. Hello, Kelly. How's it going? You're muted, of course, Kelly.
Of
Might want
course,
to.
and I've been doing so good at that too. I haven't done it in such a long time.
You were
So
doing good for about 2 seconds, and then you realized you're muted there. But hey, Kelly, what's going on?
not much. How are you doing, Dan?
Doing good, Kelly. Doing good. I understand you have our question of the week results last week.
I do have them. Last week we asked if you could rewrite the Bible, what would it say? And we got a whole bunch of great answers. I was reading through them; some were really good. But
I'm excited
here
to
are
hear
the
about these
ones.
because I thought it was a great question. So I want to hear this for
It
sure.
is. So here are the 3 favorite answers that we finally picked. Number 3 from Serge Heichko. I'm sorry if I butchered that. If you could rewrite the Bible, what would it say? Read more than one book and be less gullible.
Nice, nice, good one. Short and
Good
sweet.
advice.
I like it.
And then Dustin King, my Bible 2.0 would be blank. The reader has to fill it in for themselves.
Oh, okay. All
Ooh,
right. A little shift on the
interesting.
genre. It's just a
Yeah.
notebook at that point. A very expensive, very big notebook. Yeah,
That's kind of new agey, you kind of fit all the parts of
that is
religion into
true.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sell
And
that
not
for
that I
20
don't
bucks
think
at
that
Barnes and Noble, get some money off that. Yeah.
I talk to Dustin on the internet all the time, and he's not new agey at all, but it sounded kind of that way. From my new age experience from hanging out with all those people for so many years.
Yeah.
But our number one answer from Job Fortuna: if I wrote the Bible, I would add to the first page, this book contains discussions of violence, sex, and other scenes not suitable for people under the age of 18.
True. True. Yep. Yep. fair is fair. You know,
Yep.
if they got to put that in front of Netflix, they got to put that in the Bible. I think. But yeah, those are pretty good answers, Kelly. Thanks for
Those are
sharing.
good answers. And for next week, we are going to ask people to give us the answer to, if Jesus was the magician at your child's party, what trick would you have him perform? Fee, what you got an answer for that?
Oh my goodness.
I know I just put you on the spot, didn't I?
Yeah, you should ask
I'm-
me
I-
first, because I would say, like blowing up a bunch of balloons without stopping. Like he could just keep going and going and going and going. You know, eventually a regular man, he gets tired, but for the Son of God,
Yeah,
balloons for everybody. You know.
that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a kid's party, water in the apple juice. I don't know. Like,
My first thought was something similar. While all the kids were in the backyard having fun, I'd bring Jesus into the kitchen and show him a keg full of water.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, water into apple juice though is pretty banging. I like that one, honestly.
Cool.
So thank you, Kelly.
Thank you
for that question. And remember to leave a comment below, not in the live chat if you're watching live, but leave a comment, and we will read your answer for next week. Yeah. Anything else you got before we sign you off, Kelly?
No, I can just go back to my cage now. They changed the paper.
We'll put you back. I'll refill your water bowl after the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
that. Okay, sounds good, bud. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Kelly.
And we are back to today's program. Shout outs to Kelly for his jokes and for bringing us all the laughs. Do you want to talk to some people today?
Yeah,
You want to
why
talk to some
not?
folks? All right, let's do it. Before we talk to folks, we have to thank a patron of the week, because every single week we're always giving a shout out to the folks on Patreon. And this week's patron of the week is going to be waiting for it. Skeptic Cody. Thank you so much, Skeptic Cody. And thank you to everybody that donates on the Patreon. You guys rock for that. Go to tiny.cc/Patreon TW if you'd like to be a patron of the week. But thank you to everybody, of course. And with that out of the way, let's get to our first caller. We have John from Canada who wants to talk to us today, and wants to talk to us about Mormonism, interestingly enough. John, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Dan, I'd like to know, what do you think of Mormonism? Tell me your opinion, Mr. Dan.
What do I think of Mormonism? Well, I think it's funny. I saw the Book of Mormon on Broadway this year. And I'd never seen the show before. And that doesn't talk as much. It talks a little bit about the actual Book of Mormon. It's mostly its own story. But, I've read things. I've talked to Bryce Blankenegg, who's a host of the Naked Mormonism podcast, and a bunch of other Mormons, ex-Mormons. And they all have very funny things to say and are going to be way more insightful. But it's a very American thing, isn't it? Everybody always says it's a very American religion, and that has to be true. Like we talked a few weeks ago about some of the verbiage that comes out of the documents from the head honchos in the Mormon Church, and like how they want to proselytize to folks, and it's very corporate. It's very much like run like a business. I mean, it's no secret that the Mormons are some of the largest landowners in the U.S. and in part of the world, right? Just from all the buildings and stuff that they buy up for part of the church to do, whatever with. I don't know. They really take advantage of being a church, I guess. So the average Mormon, perfectly fine people. I'm obviously going to be more skeptical of the folks on high. But it's just a very funny religion to me, especially the more you dive into like Joseph Smith and his shenanigans, interpreting the tablets through a hat, and all the fun stories that come with it. And the fact that like Bigfoot's a thing, like unofficially in Mormonism, because like one guy basically thought they saw a hairy monster and they thought it was Cain, and Cain is, I guess, Bigfoot. A lot of stuff there. But I don't know. That's my thoughts. What do you think, Fee?
Oh, I think they don't like black people, so I don't know that
Yeah,
really.
you
I
know,
mean,
that's true.
beyond that, like I don't know that I'm too curious.
Yeah, they changed. You know, we were talking about policy changes. Apparently, in the
Yeah.
1970s, God was okay with black people being in charge of the Mormon Church. You know, funny how that works.
Yeah,
But
that part. I know the
yeah,
magical panties and not liking black people. I'm gonna
yeah,
go with a hard pass. No,
yeah.
I'm good.
Meeting a black Mormon, if you meet one, you gotta buy a lottery ticket, right? Because
You
it's
have
like,
to.
wow, that's not too many of those, I think. But I don't know, John. That's our thoughts. What do you think?
So, I don't know what to say about that. But what shenanigans are you referring to by Mr. Joseph Smith, the founder of of Mormonism? What do you think?
What shenanigans am I referring to? Where do I even begin? I mean, holy cow. First of all, the guy, you know, says he has these, he talks to the angel Moroni, and only he's ever talked to the angel. No one's ever seen him talk to the angel. And there's a group of people that claim that they have seen the tablets, but also kind of not really. And Joseph's the only guy that ever really saw them, because everyone else kind of said they saw visions of them, which is like not the same thing. And then other people like recanted some of their testimonies. You know, it's like very sketchy. And on top of this, you know, Joseph Smith becomes a wanted criminal, and that's why like Utah is like kind of a thing, because he kept getting kicked out of all the places he was at. So a lot of violence that happened there. He was very critical of the newspapers that were critical of him. So there was a lot of threats to the newspapers publishing stories about him and stuff. I mean, you got to read a book about Joseph Smith's life, because it's pretty wild, the stuff that he was getting up to.
I also think that at a certain point, like no matter what a person is claiming, you got to ask, how do they know that? Like,
Yeah.
how could you possibly falsify what he's saying? So, what are you asking from the standpoint of, do they sound credible, or what's your question?
Oh, I just wanted to know if you. I know you guys are against. I know you guys are against Christianity. But I just want to know if you're more against Mormonism than any other Christianity, or is it all the same?
I don't know
Oh,
if I'm more against it. I mean, like, it's just as false as other kinds of Christianity. And by the way, you know, I've said this before. A lot of people say Mormons aren't Christians. They definitely are Christians, first and foremost. They definitely follow Christ and his teachings. They also follow some other teachings too, you know?
they say the same thing about Jehovah's Witnesses, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think theirs primarily is because they are not Trinitarian, but they say the same thing.
Yeah. So I think Christians like to distance themselves from Mormonism, because if you know, a lot of Christians see Mormonism as silly because of the planet stuff and, you know, racism. Not that that's silly, but it is silly, but it's like more bad than silly. You know what I mean? It's you know, but the truth is, if you look at the factual claims that Mormonism makes, it's the same as Christianity. It's just some more BS on top, you know, when you factor in Joseph Smith and the prophets that came with him and all that stuff. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I think I know how not just Mormonism, but I think I know how all religion came about. I suspect that a long time ago, when humans were evolving and we were coming out of in a case, we were roving around the African Sahara Desert, and we were looking up in the sky wondering, what the F are we doing here? We were thinking something or someone must have put us here. And when we saw things like fire, wind, water, or things that were wondrous to us at the time, we thought something powerful must have created that. And we also it must have been shocking for our ancestors when they saw two things: A female Neanderthal giving birth, and B, when a Neanderthal passed on. So it gave them hope that when the person did die, they weren't really gone. I guess it's transcended to the 21st century.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of ideas about the origins of religion, right? And some of it, as you mentioned, are explanations for natural phenomenon, right? Like giving sort of catharsis for death, right? Giving relief for death when other people die and we're kind of scared and we don't know what that means for us existentially, right? Heaven is kind of a answer for that, or other kinds of afterlives, right? So, I mean, there's definitely a psychological function there, but like when you talk about like Mormonism, I don't know. I think Joseph Smith was just a guy who wanted to be a cult leader. I think some people just want to be cult leaders, you know, and maybe Jesus was the same way, by the way. I don't necessarily, and people think this is a very controversial take. I don't think it's that controversial at all. When you think about folks like David Koresh or Joseph Smith or any of the other founders, you know, Jesus did found his own kind of version of Judaism, right? Like Mormonism took from Christianity in the same way that Christianity took from Judaism. He was doing his own spin on it and had his own teachings to it. So, you know, I just think that some people like having that kind of power and people congregate around that for one reason or another too, you know? So.
And I also think that like there's one thing to be curious, and I don't disagree with you on that. You know, I think that most religions stem from trying to understand the world around us, but it's one thing to be curious and kind of in awe when you see an elephant give birth, and then another thing to say that there's magical underwear. Like, I think that's kind of a bridge too far. One has nothing to do with the other. So it's the additional rules and the additional made up requirements that usually accompany these high control religions that just make absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's psychological safeguarding in being part of a group, right? You know, and I think Mormon, that kind of, because the underwear stuff and all that, you know, that happens on a higher level with Mormonism. You know, the casual Mormons don't always do that kind of thing, right? It happens for specific ceremonies and stuff, right? And so we joked earlier about like these sorts of initiations, you know, like it is part of a, I don't know, some people have a desire to ascend and move themselves higher up in some sort of hierarchy, right? And we build these social sort of dynamics to be able to do that sometimes, for better or worse. So I don't know, a lot going on there, John. But we gave our thoughts. What do you think?
Oh, I think that might be true. What you're saying. However, all I'm gonna say is that let's keep searching, shall we, until we find the truth. Don't you agree?
I would agree with that. If God wants to come talk to me, the lines are open. You know, I've been saying that for a while. But so far, I've only ever heard about God through other people. Isn't that interesting?
Okay, Dan, I'm going to ask you a personal question. If God called this show right now, let's say I hang up this phone, and the next person who calls is God, would you take his call?
Would I take his call? Hell yeah, I'd take his call. Yeah, I'd be scared not to be honest. Right?
Oh, so
God's not exactly a nice guy, all things considered. When you look at all the stories, sometimes he is, but a lot of times he get pretty mad if you don't. But I don't know. What about you? If God was calling, you'd pick up the phone?
Yeah. I have plenty of questions though.
Yeah, that's true.
Aren't you risking his ire by having this show, by questioning him?
I think God has a lot more stuff to worry about than me hosting a call-in show, right? There are people getting killed. There are people getting abused all the time in much worse ways. If blasphemy is the worst thing I do, then so be it. But it's not because I wasn't open to talking to him. That's definitely not the case.
Yeah, and I mean, don't you think, John, that if God is he holds all the power, right? Like there's nothing that he can't access. He knows where the fuck I live, right? Like if he wants to talk to me, he can do that. But like to Dan's point, the moment a human stops speaking about him, we don't hear from him. So if his goal, like I think about my relationship with my child, if I want to ensure that I have a close relationship with my child, then there are certain things that I have to do as the authority figure. I don't see why that would be any different for God.
Okay, but I see. But but what if you guys are wrong and you end up standing before him?
Well, I think I would be fine with that because I'm honest, right? Like, I honestly don't think slavery is okay. I honestly don't think bashing babies' heads against rocks is okay. I don't think that having it's in there. I don't think those things are okay, and I'll stand 10 toes.
Tell me the verse. I want to know.
I'm sorry?
It's in, he's asking about the verse. It's talking about a proverb specifically. Oh, sorry, Psalms. Yes. Thank you, Kelly. I can hear Kelly right now. Usually he's muted, but now I can hear him. Thank you. Yeah, I don't have the specific psalm off the top of my head, but there is a psalm referencing the bashing of the infants' heads of the enemy.
Oh, I must have missed that part. Well,
Yeah.
I think I'll let you go now. But have a good night and say hello to Kelly for me.
Thanks, John. Will do. And can I ask you something before you go, John? Usually people are asking me before they go, but I want to ask you something, John. Is that okay?
Yes, you may ask.
Okay. If God stood before you right now to judge you, why should you be afraid?
Okay. Well, if we're talking about a being who created the universe out of nothing in 6 24-hour days, and he has the power and the tendency to dish out his divine power whenever he feels upset. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
He flooded the earth, destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and let's see, what else did he do? In the Bible, he murdered a man for not impregnating his brother's widow.
Yeah.
If he has the power and the tendency to do that, if he's true and he's not happy with me, I'm in serious trouble.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? You're afraid because he can commit acts of violence against you.
Mm-hmm.
He can,
right?
He can, and he will.
Yeah. I mean, is that just? You think?
Well,
you think that's a good thing?
If you ask a Christian, he's going to tell you that it is just, because anything God does is just, regardless of.
Sure. But what about you, John? What do you think?
You know, when I started thinking, I started saying to myself, you know, there are some things that are unacceptable, and if we're going to akin God to our parent, even if a parent does something to the child, it's still wrong, because the child is a separate being. Even though the child came from the parent, it's two different people. That means you can't do whatever you want to them.
Yeah.
Even if that if that was the case, I have to say that God would be wrong to do anything to us, because we are separate beings from Him. We're self-aware.
There you go, John. I like that answer. I like that. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. I won't take up your time. You have a great rest of your night.
You too.
Yeah. So there you go, John from Canada. What'd you think, Fee?
Good call. I mean, it's always fascinating to me when people are curious about religions that are so I don't want to say fringe, but you know what I mean, like off the beaten path from traditional Christianity. Like I would always say, like I get being born into, you know, Jehovah's Witness religion, but I can't. I struggle to hear or understand how someone could hear it, you know, hear what the teachings are, and still sign up for it. So it's just interesting. But I think people are looking for answers. People, specifically in this day and age when things are so uncertain and chaotic. So I understand it, but yeah, there are certain things that I just don't know that I would be able to push past.
I get it. Yeah, and I wonder that too. Is it my personality? Is it just, you know, what are all these factors that contribute to some people staying and some people leaving? Because I imagine if you grew up in Mormonism, you'd find ways to justify it, right?
Yeah,
You'd find
absolutely.
ways.
I think I found ways to justify Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I remember somebody told me one day that it was a cult. I'm like, no, it's not. And I found all the reasons why. Well, it is not. But you know, that was an interior look. Like, and you only know what you know. Like, you don't know. We were talking about this before the show. Like, none of us know what we don't know. And then I think sometimes in that search for truth, there's also that voice in the back of your head saying, okay, hell might be real, you know, that fear-based that thing. But like I was saying, like I would much rather go for truth, because ultimately if I'm performing anyway and God is omniscient, He knows I'm faking the funk. Like, what am I going to do that for? Like, you can't hide from a God that knows your own thoughts. So
that's right. I have to trust that a God would be fair and just, and if He is fair and just, He'd realize that it doesn't make sense to me. I can't just willingly. It's like trying to make myself believe the Earth is flat. It's like I don't. You know, I understand that people believe that and that idea exists, but I can't make myself believe that. I have to be convinced of that idea. And so, if I'm not convinced, I don't think that's a lack of virtue.
Right.
for not being convinced of that.
Yeah, people say all the time, like, what are you going to say if God, I'll say I'm honest. Like, I honestly don't believe this shit. So
Right.
it's not like I'm pretending.
But
and to your point.
doesn't that go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show? You know, authenticity, not a Christian value. Really
That
never
part.
has been.
No, it can't
Right?
be. It absolutely can't be. I mean, think about it. It preaches this concept of like uniformity of thought and of preferences. Like that's just not the human experience. So, yeah, I think it's a pipe dream from the beginning.
For a lot of us, yeah. I mean, for some people, you know, authoritarianism is their bread and butter, but not me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
No,
that.
not at all.
Folks, we still have open lines right now. I would love to talk to anybody who wants to call into the show, and it doesn't have to be about Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses. It can be about any of the usual stuff that we talk about, you know, aliens, religion, your weird experience. There was that one guy that never called me back, and I wish he did, about how he, you know, stared into a laser and saw the code of the universe. That was the thing that happened. I want to know what's up with that guy. Yeah, so like this was on like Joe Rogan like a year ago. There was some guy preaching that nonsense, and I think it got a lot of people into staring into lasers, which is like not a good thing to do, obviously.
Kind of retina damaging, right?
Yeah, it's not. I hear it's not great for you. Never done it myself, but I don't plan on starting it, and maybe that's my problem. But
yeah, 0 out of 10. I've never done it, but I also would not recommend. No,
that's true. Yeah. So we'll keep the conversation flowing here. Fee, I'd love to talk to you more about you know, your thoughts now that you are an atheist, and particularly, you know, you're wearing that shirt, a black atheist, and I love that because we have these conversations. I've had this conversation with other black content creators that have been on the show, and I've heard this come up more than once. This idea that being black and being a Christian are also kind of hard to separate in this idea. Is that line up with your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
It is rare to meet black people that don't love Jesus. Like it is I didn't have the traditional like, you know, Kojic or Baptist or holiness experience, because Jehovah's Witnesses are very like structured. Like they're not theatrical with the music and things like that. But like there was and still is a very strong correlation between being Black in America and being Christian, because Christianity was the vehicle that was utilized to, you know, it was pushed upon our ancestors. Like we know the history of that. So it's really difficult to have a conversation with another, I mean, just out at Walmart, right? Like, or at Publix, you know, just a random conversation with a stranger, it is going to come up. One of the first things that people will ask you, well, what church do you go to? And when you tell them you don't, like, they look at you as if you've grown like another head. I've been deconstructing for over 20 years, and I think just my resistant and stubborn nature, it makes me able to deal with it. But there are a lot of people that it's difficult for them because of the fact that that expectation is there. You go to family functions, that expectation to hold hands and pray and, you know, praise and worship for whatever period of time is there. And their entire communities kind of center around this idea of Jesus. So it's hard to separate that salt from the stew in that regard, because it's so very baked into so much of what Black American culture is.
Yeah, for sure. Like Christianity is a religion of an oppressor group, right? And it's and that's hard for people to sort of think about, because when we think about that, we think about, you know, people say, oh, Islam, right? You know, Islam famously originally did a lot of military campaigns and stuff in occupied countries and stuff, and so that's why a lot of Africans are Muslim, because there's roots there. But like Christianity did the exact same thing, right? Like the Christians were out there sending their envoys and doing stuff, and you know, being Black and being part of that experience also meant that was the religion of the people that owned you. You know, if you're a slave, that your slave owners were probably Christian, and so you probably had access to the same sort of religious materials. I mean, where else would you get it from, right? It's hard, because I remember talking about this. I had a coworker he was a pastor's son. He was Black, and This was many years ago, and I like just want to say to him, like, dude, this is the religion that caused so much harm for Black people. It's hard for me to get that across, but then people seeing it, I don't know. It's very complicated, right? Because obviously I'm white, and it's hard for me to just say, hey, this is the religion of the oppressor. You can't, you shouldn't believe this. But like, obviously Black Christianity almost has developed such a different culture from white Christians in a way. And so there's also a sort of a benefit to that as well. Like I can't say it's all bad because the people have obviously found refuge in that. So I don't know. It's very complicated.
Well, I think about it like from the perspective of like in the days of slavery, like being able to congregate for the purpose of worship was the only permissible type of congregation, right? So it became like this central point for communities to gather and to convene and to socialize with each other. But I saw a content creator, and I cannot remember who it was. I know it was on TikTok, but she phrased it in such, I think, a powerful way. She said that if Christianity were going to free Black people, it never would have been given to them in the first place. We know that, realize in this country, like the position that we are in and how this country was built, utilizing labor of Black people. So I think that it is still looked to as the vehicle for emancipation and for liberation. But it doesn't even have liberation baked into it to begin with. So I don't know how something that's so repressive could be used for liberation. It's just kind of an oxymoron when you think about it.
I 100% agree with you. Look, Christians, what is the stereotype of American Christians, right? Like usually Southern people, right? Hey, who was the majority slave owner population? Oh, it was people in the South. Wait, how does that factor in? Well, because like it was okay. It has always been okay in Christianity to own slaves. This idea of separating that is a much newer idea that historically did not have that same level of presence that we hold it today. A lot of Christians today like to say, oh, well, it was Christians that freed the slaves, but it was Christians that owned the slaves in the first place. Like it's crazy like, how people justify that.
Who the fuck do you think they were fighting against? Also Christians over there too.
Yeah. Liberation theology, I love it. It's great. I just wish that was the way from the beginning. Liberation theology comes as a response, not as a origin point, right? So,
but now you're seeing like it kind of being moonwalked back a little bit, because I saw a preacher the other day that was a clip of him saying like, slavery is not bad, and as a Christian you're gonna have to figure out a way to accept that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
That's the worst. What? Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
What
so
do you do
like
with that?
we are in the upside down, because how can you? And I mean, the reality is the book supports that.
No, that's what
the book clearly supports that. So the irony is that guy is more closely aligned with what the Bible says as opposed to the one that's teaching abolition.
You're
which
absolutely
is crazy.
Right. You're absolutely right. And that's why, I make that concession earlier where I'm like, yeah, this is the one thing I agree with young earth creationists. I agree with that guy. Yeah. If you look at the Bible straight on, there absolutely nothing that says, hey, this institution is wrong, actually, and shouldn't be held. It is, if anything, normalized. At best, right?
Thinker and I were talking earlier this week about, the social experiment with the lady calling the churches to ask for baby formula, and all of them turning her down and things like that. How there are a lot of Christian content creators making response videos, and they're like, Jesus would tell you to do this for your neighbor. Like, no, he wouldn't. Like, if you were a fellow Israelite, perhaps. But I think that gets back to what we were saying earlier, how your typical pew-sitting Christian has not really read this book. They haven't looked into like the historical context. They don't know that love your neighbor is your fellow Israelite. There were completely different rules for dealing with people who were not. So it's a lack of education, it's misinformation, and I think a lot of it is by design because it keeps people in a controllable state. Yeah,
you're so right. I want to speak to that because this doesn't get said enough. If you look at the Old Testament and just take it as it is a Jewish supremacist book. And that wasn't uncommon, right? It's not exclusive in that, right? There's other surrounding nation states that also, and religion is very much tied to nation states, right? The state of Israel is tied to the Jewish religion. This was a religion by and for Jewish people, and that's why they are God's people. If you cringe at the idea of white guys saying white people are God's chosen people, that phrase comes from being exclusively for Jews. Like it's just, and so Christianity was radical in the sense that it sort of liberates itself from that idea. Of course, and I know that you know this, but for listeners, and we've talked about this before on the show, but you'll see debates in the New Testament between Paul and Peter talking about, hey, is this for the Jews or is this for the Gentiles? The fact that they're even having to talk about that means it was controversial, right? Like it wasn't widely accepted. So, we're very universalist in our Christianity now, but that wasn't always the case. And obviously, now, does it support, theories of class, oppressor versus the oppressed? Yes, but it was for a very, very particular time and place. Certainly, not for the dynamics we have today.
Yeah, and then clearly it's been remixed over 45,000 different times because we have these 45,000 different denominations. So if the people who wrote the book couldn't agree on what the book was saying, and we see 45,000 different variations of what the book is saying, like at what point do we realize the book ain't saying shit that we could actually utilize for any sort of reliable direction?
Yeah, Jesus being a remix of Judaism as well. It's just a never-ending remix. For sure. But we're preaching to the choir here somewhat. I think on this because that what we just talked about in the last 5 minutes there is like the most, I don't know, one of the most important, I want to say, truths about this religion to me. I like. If you ask me what's going to be the hardest thing for me to overcome, there's obviously like the existence of God stuff, but the idea of becoming a Christian, like I have to overcome all of that historical reality, like of the religion. And obviously none of that was taught to me in church, 0% of that, like maybe a factor 2, but all of that comes through academic study, like secular academic study. And Christians will never get access to that information unless we talk about it.
Right. And I think like in the day and age of TikTok and social media, I think the academic information is more readily available and more readily accessible, which is great. But the problem is, are they going to be willing to listen to it? Because if you can't talk to a person about the fact that this book has been translated a million different times and what the original language was and who the original audience was that this text was written to, the vast majority of Christians don't care about that. Like they are Christians by culture. They are Christians because they've absorbed this belief system passed on to them for their family. So they don't know that this book says, this God is saying you can have slaves. They don't know these things. I never read that verse a day in my life, and I was a Jehovah's Witness for over 30 years, right? So most people don't read those problematic scriptures, and I think that those in leadership avoid them and skip over them intentionally.
And it's also crazy that most Christians in Christian history weren't able to even read it themselves because there's an exclusivity on the language. Right. Like how wild is that? I don't know. It's like, cause it's good that you point that out because like, I don't know. I have to remind myself that being atheist is kind of a privilege in a way because my social and economic standing definitely gave me access to the resources that I got to have to be educated and to figure out some of the stuff that I've been able to figure out, right? Like, would I still be a Christian if I didn't go to college? Maybe. Would I still be a Christian if I didn't have access to the various resources that I have in the year 2025 and not 1905? I don't know. Right. If I was born in 1905, I'd probably still be a Christian because they didn't have all the commentaries and stuff that I've read about biblical scholarship and things like that. So I don't know. TikTok is a very interesting platform for that because on the one hand, you have maybe one of the largest fire hoses of misinformation possible, just kind of sweeping the internet. And on the other hand, you have folks like yourself who are talking to folks and trying to correct the record, as it were. So yeah, don't know what to do with that. Folks, we still have open lines here, and I'm disappointed. I want you to call in so you can talk to Fe because this is supposed to be a call-in show. Okay. And you're making me look bad right now because I know we have callers out there. Please come talk to us. Let's have a conversation. For now, we might bring Kelly in because I think Kelly said he wanted to join in. What's up, Kelly? You're muted again,
Kelly's
Kelly.
muted.
Dang, Kelly. You're 0 for 2 on this.
I
Come
can't
on.
believe it. And I was thinking to myself, because we talked about bringing me up in the chat, and I was like, I got to make sure.
And you know what? I heard you
myself.
laugh earlier too. You weren't muted.
Muted.
Like,
I know, right? Well, at least I was there with the Psalms thing.
You were there with, yeah, you did. You kind of came, you third partied that real hard, and that threw me off because I'm not used to hearing you talk while I'm talking to somebody else. But yeah, that was helpful. Thanks for that. What you got for us, Kelly?
But it was appropriate at the time anyway.
Yeah.
I was really interested when Fe was talking about how Christianity was really used to keep the black race downtrodden. I don't want to say race, but black people downtrodden, right?
Yes.
And I've shown it before, but I have a book that was published in the antebellum South in 1851. That's the Bible Defense of Slavery.
Oh, wow.
Bible Defense of Slavery.
And as you can see, it's like thicker than a Bible. So,
oh, wow.
And the crazy thing about it was actually written by a minister.
Yeah, that
really
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So, and it is literally the most racist thing I've ever read. When we were doing sound checks and I was looking for a book to read, I almost picked it up and read a passage out of it.
Don't tell me that you almost picked that book, Kelly. Don't tell me that.
I read the Bible, so I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. I did read a passage out of this once on nonprofits to show how racist the pro-slavery side was at that time, because it totally was. I mean, they didn't even think of blacks as people. Yeah. And that is just so fucking wrong. You know?
Yeah. There's definitely a part of that. Like, and I interned a little bit at Baylor University. I didn't go to school there, but I lived in Waco. So I also found some texts from, because they have the Texas collection at Baylor, which is the largest collection of Texas artifacts, right? And so I had access to a lot of material there, and I found stuff of also like Christians writing of the time, saying in defense of slavery, because we talked about this earlier, but. Yes, there were Christians liberating this, but there was just as many defending the institution, because it's like anything with Christianity, like nothing is actually set in stone and can be like reinterpreted away to whatever. So I'm glad that interpretation sort of won out in the end, but it's right. It wasn't credible to begin with. Like it just didn't, the book didn't start with good human values. At the beginning, I
don't think it ever had any, right? And I think you have Christians.
If you were Jew, if you were Hebrew, it had great values, so. Right?
Yeah.
But we were talking about there's nothing specifically in the Bible that was teaching that downtrodden thing, and there is. It's the Beatitudes, right?
Yeah.
Don't make a fuss. Don't rock the boat. Just kick back and accept it all and be meek and that's exactly what they wanted slaves to learn, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That was the thing. So
meekness, yeah. What were you going to say, Fee? You were going to say something.
Sorry, Fee.
No, you're good. It's gone. It may come back later.
You don't know me that well.
No, you're fine. But we were talking to a guy on live this morning who was saying that same thing. Like, if more people followed Christ, then the world would be better. And we were kind of going through this thing, like, you mean like just let people abuse you, like, and turn the other cheek, like constantly be in this subservient position? How is that going to be beneficial for anybody but folks who are going to abuse the fact that you feel like you're required to do that? So I think it just kind of sets this framework to allow for folks to be taken advantage of and used, and that position is what they believe brings them favor to God, which is insane to me, because why would a God want you to humiliate yourself consistently for the purpose of proving what? Like, I don't get it.
Why would a God even need worshipers at all? I mean,
that part.
That's what fuels his powers, I think.
It's
like a gauge. Yeah, it has to
like
go
gas,
up.
It's like gas in his tank.
It's like gas in the tank. Yeah, you gotta get the worshipers in. I don't know. I'm just spitballing
Well,
here.
what did he do before people though? Like, how did he not run out of gas
Just
before
chilling.
humans?
I don't know.
Just
Yeah.
kicking back.
I'm not saying my interpretation is biblically sound. I'm just saying it,
Biblically sound is optional, Dan. Like,
It's
they
also
just make shit up as they
you're right
go.
about that. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're not the first people to say this, but it's like, why make the rules if you're going to be mad about people breaking them if you give them the option to break it? Just doesn't make sense. There people say the free will thing, but like I don't have the free will to set Kelly's head on fire right now, right? Like that's not an ability for me. Would the world be a better place if I had that ability to do that at any time? I don't think so.
Not for me, definitely.
Yeah, it's like, why do I need the ability to kill people or the ability to cause harm in unjust ways? Like I don't have to actually do that if I was built different. If I was like a robot, but I don't know. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
None of it does. None of it does, though. I mean, from the beginning, it doesn't make sense. But again, you'd have to read the book to know that it doesn't make sense, which most Christians are not going to do. They just listen to what people tell them to believe about it. And then, like, come in with their whole chest, like, advocating for it. Like, my guy, that's not in the book. You're not going to find that anywhere in the book, but they've been convinced to believe that it is. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to know when your conversations with folks on TikTok, because I imagine we probably share similar conversations. Is it mostly Christians that you're talking to about Christianity, or do you ever get to to other religions, and do they question you on that?
Well, it depends on the panel. Like Thinker's panel is Christian, either, current Christian, deconstructing, or an atheist. There are other deconstruction content creator and live hosts that will entertain like spiritualists or Muslims or people of other faiths. So it is primarily Christian, but we get a little bit of everything in these conversations. You would be surprised. Well,
Yeah, I believe it.
You do Truth Morning. You would not be surprised.
Yeah, I definitely believe it. I imagine you talk to a lot of people from different walks of life, just like we try to do here when we have calls of folks to talk to. But we are currently experiencing open lines right now. I just got a message, and I noticed you use this too, Kelly, and I don't want to call you out live here.
No, go ahead, call me out.
If you want to speak to that, that'd be great. Or I can say it too. I just the use of the word there, if you want to.
Yeah, and I apologize completely. So that was my bad.
Well, specifically, if you don't mind talking about it, or just because I don't. Anyway, use of the word blacks specifically.
Yeah, the use of the word blacks instead of black people, and I completely apologize for that. That was my slip of the tongue, and I didn't mean anything by it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I want to give Kelly credit here. I've known Kelly for a long time. Okay. We do this stuff live and sometimes we don't always use the best words. So thank you for that, Kelly.
Sometimes both of my brain cells get stuck together. And lately, I did have a stroke about 5 weeks ago, and I'm not saying that that's the cause of it, but I have been using that as an excuse for almost everything since then. So I'm going to pull that out.
I appreciate
it was bad. That was really bad on my part, and I fully apologize for it.
Thank you for that, Kelly.
And if anybody wants to stop by my store tomorrow and slap me in the face for it, feel free.
Okay, well, let's maybe not go that far, but I appreciate you doing that, Kelly, because I know it's kind of awkward. But I'm glad we could address it. So move.
But and I also think we have to leave space for people to be human, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And if you recognize that you said something and you admit it, we've got to leave space for people to be human, and I appreciate you acknowledging it.
It's okay. And you know what? Look, just to level with you here, I used the wrong word a few weeks ago on a different stream when I was talking about little people, and I used the word midgets. Mm-hmm. And I was so embarrassed when I did that because I know little people in real life, and I would never use that word. But I was using it because we were talking about somebody else that used it, and when I was bringing up the subject, it slipped out for me. So you know what? It is what it is. It's out there on the internet now, and I apologize for it, and I'm glad we could make that same space. So it's not that big a deal. I think at the end of the day, Kelly, because I know you and I know your heart. but
I know how you feel, Dan, because I'm embarrassed as all hell right now. So
it's okay, because I want to hold. I'm glad because Kelly, if we don't hold ourselves accountable as hosts to the same standard we hold our callers, because I know if a caller said that, I would probably bring that up too, right? So it is what it is at the end of the day. I want to move on from that subject so we can talk about something else. I think we addressed it. So, let's talk again about Jehovah's Witnesses real quick, and then maybe we can have a little bit of a shorter show today. But talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, you were a part of the religion. You're no longer part of the religion, and you still know people who are part of the religion, but a lot of them aren't your family. There are other people that grew up with you. You're now a content creator talking about it. Now that you're completely out of it, and there's doubtless somebody out there who may be listening, who may be having thoughts, maybe want to leave, but don't have a specific way how, because this show doesn't address the concerns of specifically of Jehovah's Witnesses. What would you tell somebody who is maybe struggling with that?
Wow. I think the first thing I would say is read Crisis of Conscience by Ray Franz, he was a former governing body member. And I think when this was way back in the day, it was like the book that we were told was just like the devil in printed form growing up. But I would say read that first and foremost, and then research the actual origins of the organization. Research Russell, who is the founder of the organization, and know that I would say trust that through this journey, there will be a point in time where you learn how to trust your own mind again, because it does feel as though when you've been indoctrinated, you don't know what to believe. You don't know if what you hold in your mind is something that you truly have been convinced is true, or something that you've been told to believe is true. So it's an exercise that requires a whole lot of work. It will not happen overnight, but it is possible, because ultimately on the other side of that journey is who you actually are, as opposed to who you've been told you were supposed to be your entire life.
I like that because it's hard to see ahead, right? Because you can only kind of see yourself in the now. I remember when I was first leaving my own religion, obviously mine wasn't as sort of structured in the same way yours is, where the consequences were going to be more dire, or at least hypothetically more dire, right? I was worried about what I was going to be like. I remember thinking, oh my God, how am I going to date anybody? Because I live in Texas, and like everybody here believes in God, and I like super don't believe in God, right? So how does that work, right? How am I supposed to find a partner? How am I supposed to do job interviews if I start talking about this stuff online and somebody come and they look at my stuff? So it definitely gets better, right? It gets better because the authenticity is more valuable to me, at least, than anything else, right?
It is, and I think it's worth it too, because I say this all the time, like the worst person in the world to lie to is yourself, because you can't get away from you. So we know inherently if we are being honest about what we believe, if we are just being, if we're being compliant for the purpose of keeping things civil, or not wanting to rock the boat. And you mentioned it earlier, Dan, like deconstructing is a privilege. Like you have to be in a position where you don't have to rely on the donations or the help from people that are affiliated with church organizations and things of that nature, or you don't have to perform for family members who want you to live in a certain way. So it's definitely a privileged position, but I think it's important to recognize within yourself if you're truly living a life the way that you want to live it, or living it through someone else's eyes. And I think that that's a really big part of religion, because it tells you who to be. It doesn't allow you to grow into the person that you actually are.
I love that. I love every word of that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wonderful stuff. Fe, you've been a great guest on today's show. I love talking to you. I hope I can talk to you again in the future. But in case that doesn't happen, where can people find you at if they want to see more of your stuff?
I am only on TikTok. I have amazing friends on TikTok who let me come and hop up on their panels and run my mouth, and I enjoy it. They are amazing. So I'm on Thinkers Live, I'm on Christina's Live, I'm on Oso's Live, and Xena, and I know I'm missing some people. But yeah, like if I'm Fe, Yahweh's Kryptonite on TikTok. If you see me on a panel, I'm usually talking about religion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I enjoyed talking with you today. I think for now we're going to try to wrap things up. I want to thank the awesome crew that helped make this show happen every single week. And if we could show some of the folks that help make it happen behind the scenes, look at that. And more people who aren't on camera. Oh, Vern's got the woke as fuck shirt on right now. Love that. Love that. Eli is tripping out hard as always, like the tribute. I don't know if it's, I'm not paying attention enough, Eli, to if it's the same background or not from last time, but it's always a trippy background regardless. So thank you to everybody that helped makes this show. Kelly, before we go, what is our question again this week? If you could remind folks.
Our question again is, if Jesus was the magician at your kid's birthday party, what trick would you have him perform?
Excellent, excellent. Leave a comment below if you want to figure out.
Not in the chat on the side.
Yeah. Not in the chat on the side. Do it in the comment section. And before we peace out, I always like to ask, or try to ask, because I don't do it every time, but I want to ask you, Fee, you got any words of wisdom you want to share? You kind of just gave some words of wisdom, but, you know, something short, something pithy, something, you know.
I don't know. I think, you know, words of wisdom. Question everything. Question absolutely everything. And honestly, Bash says this on TikTok all the time. The questions are God's to the answers, right? Like, so the more we get in the habit of pushing against the status quo and asking why, like, how do you know that? Who told you that? Like, ask those questions, and they may be uncomfortable for other people, but other people's comfort does not have to become your compass, because you, as an individual, I get to direct where I want to go. I get to forge this path, and even though this path may not necessarily be something that someone else wants to walk with me, that's perfectly fine. But don't be afraid to ask those questions, because as far as we know, this is the only life we get. And I don't want to put my requirements on other people, but I don't want to live it by anybody else's rules other than mine. And I want to enjoy it while I'm here.
Heck, awesome. Yeah, don't live by anyone else's rules and enjoy it while you're here.
I have some words of wisdom real quick.
Oh, Kelly does. Okay, go ahead,
If you
Kelly.
get a chance to watch Fee on TikTok, do it. She's awesome.
There you go.
Thanks, Kelly.
That's the words of wisdom. Folks, this has been another episode of Truth Wanted. I'm Objectively Dan. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, bye-bye. Guys.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/ytnp.